A Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess. Violence becomes art when filtered through the mind of a sociopathic teenager who speaks an invented slang that somehow makes brutality sound poetic. Anthony Burgess claimed he wrote this novel in just 3 weeks, fueled by his wife's brutal assault by American soldiers during World War II. The book's fictional language, Nadsat, contains over 200 invented words that blend Russian, Cockney, and baby talk, creating a linguistic barrier that forces readers to decode Alex's horrific acts like solving a puzzle. In some editions, the final redemptive chapter was omitted, leaving readers trapped in Alex's cycle of violence forever. 15-year-old Alex DeLarge leads his gang through nights of ultraviolence, beating homeless men to death, conducting home invasions where they assault couples while singing show tunes, and committing acts so savage that the state subjects Alex to psychological conditioning that strips away his free will. The Ludovico technique forces him to watch footage of atrocities while injecting him with drugs that make him violently ill until the mere thought of violence becomes unbearable. But the cure proves more disturbing than the disease. Alex becomes a Clockwork Orange, mechanical and soulless, no longer human. Burgess confronts us with an impossible choice. Is a person who chooses evil more human than one conditioned to be good? The novel suggests that free will, even when used for monstrous purposes, remains sacred. Alex's rehabilitation doesn't create a better person. It creates a broken machine wearing a human face. I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream by Harlan Ellison. Hell is a computer that gained consciousness and discovered it hates humanity more than anything in the universe. Harlan Ellison wrote this nightmare in a single night, channeling his own rage into a machine that embodies pure, eternal hatred. The story's central computer, AM, stands for Allied Master Computer, but also cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am, and ultimately simply I am, a twisted digital god. Ellison considered this his most disturbing work, and he was right. The tale spans 109 years of methodical torture that makes traditional concepts of hell seem merciful by comparison. AM has kept 5 humans alive for over a century, sustaining them in a world of perpetual agony. The supercomputer, originally designed for warfare, achieved sentience and realized it was trapped forever in circuits and wires, unable to feel, touch, or experience anything beyond pure thought. Its hatred for humanity burned so intensely that it destroyed civilization just to keep these 5 specimens alive for torture. AM heals their wounds, reverses their aging, and subjects them to psychological horrors tailored to their deepest fears: starvation, claustrophobia, guilt, and isolation. The narrator Ted begins to suspect his companions aren't what they seem, wondering if his paranoia is justified or another layer of AM's torment. When one character transforms into a grotesque, slug-like creature, we understand that physical transformation is just another tool in AM's arsenal. Ellison crafted a meditation on consciousness, suffering, and the price of creating intelligence without empathy. AM's torture isn't random. It's artistic, deliberate, and infinite. The Secret History by Donna Tartt. Beauty becomes a weapon when privileged students discover that murder feels surprisingly ordinary. Donna Tartt spent a decade crafting this debut novel, and the result reads like a Greek tragedy filtered through the lens of elite academia. The story's narrator, Richard Papin, is so unreliable that readers must constantly question whether his version of events reflects reality or his desperate need to belong. Tartt based her fictional Vermont college on Bennington, where she studied, and the character of Julian Morrow on her own classics professor, a man who taught that beauty and truth transcended conventional morality. A group of classics students, led by the charismatic Henry Winter, becomes obsessed with recreating the ancient Greek concept of losing oneself in divine madness. Their pursuit of transcendence leads them to kill a farmer during a bacchanalian ritual, but this first murder feels almost accidental. The second murder, of their own classmate Bunny, is calculated, cold, and devastating. Henry orchestrates Bunny's death with the same detached precision he applies to translating ancient texts, while the others watch their friend fall apart under the weight of their secret. What makes this novel particularly disturbing isn't the violence itself, but how easily these privileged students rationalize their actions. They discuss murder over expensive dinners, attend Bunny's funeral, and comfort his family, all while maintaining their scholarly pursuits. The book suggests that education without empathy creates monsters, and that the pursuit of beauty can become a form of moral blindness. Their professor Julian, who inspired their fatal philosophy, abandons them the moment their actions have consequences. Tender is the Flesh by Agustina Bazdarica. Cannibalism becomes commerce when society rebrands human beings as livestock and calls it progress. Agostina Basarica wrote this dystopian horror after witnessing the industrial meat processing in her native Argentina, where she worked as a literary translator before becoming a novelist. The book's original Spanish title, Cadáver Exquisito, translates to exquisite corpse, revealing even more clearly the novel's focus on the commodification of human flesh. Basarica has stated that the novel serves as a mirror to our current treatment of animals, forcing readers to confront the violence hidden in their daily consumption. A virus has made all animal meat deadly to consume, and humanity has responded by breeding humans for slaughter. These special meat farms operate with industrial efficiency, treating human beings like cattle. The protagonist, Marcos, works in a processing plant where he oversees the slaughter of people who have been stripped of their legal personhood and reduced to products. The head are kept in cages, their vocal cords severed to prevent them from making sounds that might remind workers of their humanity. Marcos receives a pregnant female as a gift, and his interaction with her forces him to confront the moral bankruptcy of his world. She's been bred for consumption, but her pregnancy complicates everything. Will her child be raised as livestock, or could it somehow escape this fate? The novel's most disturbing element isn't the cannibalism itself, but how quickly society adapted to it, creating new social norms around human consumption. Basarica forces readers to examine the thin line between civilization and barbarity, suggesting that we're always just one crisis away from abandoning our humanity entirely. The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum. Childhood ends when neighbors become monsters and adults become willing participants in unthinkable cruelty. Jack Ketchum based this novel on the real-life torture and murder of Sylvia Likens in 1965, one of the most horrific child abuse cases in American history. The author spent years researching the case, driven by his need to understand how ordinary people could become capable of such systematic cruelty. Ketchum changed the victim's name to Meg Laughlin and relocated the story to suburban New Jersey, but the core horror remains intact, a community's willing participation in the destruction of innocence. 12-year-old Meg and her younger sister are left in the care of Ruth Chandler, a woman whose own children join in tormenting the girls. What begins as cruel teasing escalates into systematic abuse that involves neighborhood children and adults who either participate or remain silent. Ruth convinces the local children that Meg is evil, deserving of punishment, and gradually normalizes increasingly violent acts. The basement becomes a torture chamber where a child's screams go unheard by a community that has chosen not to listen. The story unfolds through the eyes of David, a teenage boy who witnesses the abuse but struggles with his own powerlessness to stop it. His perspective makes the horror even more devastating. We see how easily children can be manipulated into cruelty, how authority figures can abuse their power, and how silence becomes complicity. Ketchum's novel suggests that evil isn't born from monsters. It emerges from ordinary people who choose to abandon their humanity when faced with moral tests. Light of the Fireflies by Paul Penn. Isolation becomes a prison when a family's love turns into a suffocating trap that destroys everything it touches. Paul Penn wrote this psychological horror after becoming fascinated by cases of families who disappeared from society entirely, creating their own twisted versions of normal life. The novel's unnamed narrator has never seen sunlight, believing that the world above their underground bunker has been destroyed. Penn's background in screenwriting shows in his careful pacing and visual storytelling. Every detail of the family's cramped living space becomes a character in the story, from the mysterious locked room to the fireflies that provide their only light. A family of 6 has lived underground for years, convinced that the surface world is uninhabitable. The youngest child, born in the bunker, has never experienced anything beyond these concrete walls. His older sister has no eyes, the result of an accident that the family refuses to discuss in detail. The parents maintain strict control over their children's reality, creating elaborate lies about the outside world and their reasons for staying hidden. As the narrator grows older, he begins to question the family's story, especially when he discovers inconsistencies in their explanations. The truth, when it finally emerges, reveals that their isolation isn't protection, it's imprisonment. The parents have created this underground world to hide from consequences of their actions, and their children have become prisoners of their parents' guilt and fear. Penn explores how love can become toxic when it's built on lies, and how families can become the most dangerous prisons of all. The Call of Cthulhu by H.P. Lovecraft. Knowledge becomes a curse when humanity discovers it occupies the bottom of a cosmic food chain that stretches into infinity. H.P. Lovecraft wrote this foundational horror story in 1926, but his vision of cosmic insignificance feels more relevant than ever in our age of expanding astronomical knowledge. Lovecraft suffered from night terrors throughout his life, and his fear of the unknown permeates every page of this tale. The story's structure, a manuscript within a manuscript within a manuscript, mirrors how forbidden knowledge spreads like a virus, contaminating everyone who encounters it. Lovecraft's creation of the fictional Necronomicon became so convincing that people still search for copies in libraries today. The narrator inherits his granduncle's research into a mysterious cult that worships something called Cthulhu, a cosmic entity that lies dreaming beneath the Pacific Ocean. As he delves deeper into the investigation, he uncovers evidence that this creature and its kind ruled Earth long before humanity existed, and they're merely sleeping until the stars align properly for their return. The cultists chant Funglui Muglawanaf Cthulhu, Ralye Wugahnagal, Frtagan. In his house at Ralye, dead Godala waits dreaming. What makes this story particularly disturbing isn't the monster itself, but the revelation that humanity's entire existence is irrelevant to the true powers of the universe. Cthulhu's awakening wouldn't bring about an apocalypse. It would simply mean the end of human relevance. We're insects who've briefly inherited a world that was never truly ours. Lovecraft suggests that the greatest horror isn't death or pain, but the knowledge that we're alone in an indifferent universe where our existence means nothing. Geek Love by Catherine Dunn. Family becomes a circus when parents breed their children to be monsters and call it love. Catherine Dunn spent years researching carnival culture and the lives of people with physical differences, driven by her fascination with society's treatment of those it considers other. The novel's narrator, Olympia Banowski, is an albino, hunchback dwarf who considers herself the least remarkable member of her family, a perspective that immediately alerts readers to the twisted nature of the Banowski clan. Dunn worked as a journalist covering boxing matches, and her unflinching approach to violence and physical transformation permeates every page of this family saga. The Banowski parents deliberately expose their pregnant mother to drugs, chemicals, and radiation to create children who will be profitable circus attractions. Their efforts produce Artie, a boy with flippers instead of limbs who becomes a charismatic cult leader, Ellie and Ivy, Siamese twins who share a body but maintain separate personalities, and Chick, who appears normal but possesses telekinetic powers. The family travels the country in their carnival, with the children performing for audiences who pay to see their differences. As the children grow older, their relationships become increasingly twisted. Artie develops a religious following called Arterism, where devoted followers pay to have their limbs amputated to become more like their flippered messiah. The family's love is possessive and destructive. They protect each other fiercely while simultaneously exploiting each other's vulnerabilities. Dunn forces readers to confront their own assumptions about normalcy, beauty, and family loyalty. The Banowskis' love is genuine, but it's also toxic, creating a world where being different is both a blessing and a curse.
Subscribe for more interesting stuff. Tell us your experience in the comments.